Welcome to Truths, the podcast where love for Torah, Israel, the Jewish people, and God meets fearless critical inquiry. Through powerful conversations and thought-provoking solo teachings, we explore how timeless Jewish wisdom can ignite 21st century meaning, drive personal transformation, deepen our connection to God and to one another, and inspire bold action to heal our world. Here's your host, Rabbi Dr. Levi Brackman.
This is Levi Brackman with Truths, Jewish Wisdom for Today. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. It has been a number of months since I've released an episode, and the reason for that is because although I've recorded a number of episodes, it actually takes quite a bit of time to edit it properly and then put it out there. And I've just become very, very busy with other aspects of my life, including my business, and I just haven't had the time to do the editing. So I'm very grateful to all the people who sat down with me for the episodes. I'm now going to be releasing them over the next few weeks. But today, I have a really interesting episode to release. I recorded this over the summer when I sat down with Rabbi Yitzchok Lowy, who is a thinker who sits right at the fault lines between Hasidic warmth and Litvish or Lithuanian rigor. Yitzchok Lowy was born and raised in Lakewood, New Jersey, in a Hasidic yeshivish family. His father, Rav Shalom Lowy, is the rabbi of the Kilas Yagdal Torah in Lakewood, and himself learned in the classic Litvish yeshivos of Slobodka and Lakewood, while staying close to Hasidic rabbis. Yitzchok, who I sat down with for this episode, followed a similar path. He learned in top Litvish yeshivas like Slobodka, under people such as Rav Moshe Hirsch and Rav Dov Lando, and later he learned Chassidus, Machshava, and Kabbalah with teachers like Rav Mottel Zilber, Rabbi Yitzchok Moshe Erlinger, and Rabbi Itchemaya Morgenstern. That meeting point, the tension between a Hasidic identity and a Litvish education, became, in Rabbi Yitzchok's words, fertile ground for thinking. It pushed him to form his own independent view instead of just absorbing whatever his society's automatic mechanisms handed him. Over time, he found himself deeply dissatisfied with much of the standard Torah on offer. The typical mussar or hashkafa shmooze felt to him very flat and one-dimensional, so he was drawn instead to a kind of Hasidic renaissance, teachers who took soul, complexity, and inner life seriously, and were often strongly influenced by Chabad, even if they weren't Lubavitch or Chabad institutionally. But then, something else happened. As his own thinking developed, he realized that even these more sophisticated teachers had their own red lines, questions they wouldn't touch, assumptions they wouldn't re-examine, and arguments that they refused to follow all the way to their logical conclusions. Questions like, what do we really mean by emunah? When does faith become a way of pretending we know when we actually don't? Out of that tension, he created a new Beit Midrash Iyun LaMachshava, literally in-depth study and thought. A learning space, both physical and online, that tries to make room for all of this: rigorous Torah learning, fearless philosophical questioning, and a refusal to insult people's intelligence or faith. It's a Beit Midrash for people who want to stay inside the community and inside Torah, but can't and won't shut their minds off. So in my conversation with Rabbi Yitzchok, we talk about why he thinks much of contemporary Orthodox preaching is contentless, even when it looks inspirational. The positive and negative sides of the Hasidic and Chabad influence on today's seekers. The difference between faith and knowledge, and why I don't know is for him a spiritual and ethical stance. Also, we spoke about how he thinks the Rambam ruined the Talmud's open-ended discussions by turning it into fixed halacha. And we discussed the loneliness of serious teachers who have no real peers, surrounded by admirers, but unable to build a true chavrusa of equals. We also got into very practical questions. What does it mean to belong to a community that you never really chose? How do you build a Beit Midrash that isn't just about one more personality cult? And is it possible to have rabbis and teachers who really invite critique and mean it? So if you've ever felt like you're too thoughtful for the system, but you still care deeply about Torah, about God, and about the people and places you come from, I think you're going to find this conversation both challenging and strangely comforting. So without further ado, I present to you my conversation with Rabbi Yitzchok Lowy. Thank you very much for doing this and welcome me into your Beit Midrash here. Start off by telling me a little bit about how you came to be doing this.
How do I know? Tell me, what is this?
This, in other words, have a Beit Midrash. And I was listening to your intro shir of when you, I think 6 years ago, when you created this Beit Midrash. And you had a very interesting mahalach, or very specific mahalach of limud, which I want to get to, which is what you wanted to teach in this Beit Midrash. I'm not going to paraphrase it because I want you to say it, but what is like the origin story to that? How you got to wanting to teach this Seder limud and why that's important to you.
Yeah, one important thing is there's that intro shir, and there's a shir a few months ago. I forgot what it's titled, but it's an update on that.
Okay.
And all the ways in which I disagree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And
Your current self disagrees with your past self.
Through learning, we came to understand things in a better way.
Okay.
And in other words, what we're doing and what I should do.
But what I'm interested in is how did you come to that
Important.
realization that there was a gap in the marketplace, let's say?
Yeah, that's simple. That part
Yeah.
is simple. I thought you wanted me to start from like Masherish Neshama. Why?
You can do that too if you want, if that information is available.
You have to speak the language, and then you know. Very simple story is that I have received a very good education, if you might say that. Managed to learn a lot of things. And then had my, whatever the nice way of calling getting lost and found again is called. And
So the education that you had was...
I was in Lithuanian yeshivos. I went to Slobodka and so on, in Lakewood, and Sefta Lakewood and Slobodka, which teach what they teach, but it's very serious. And also had Hasidic education. I learned from, there's a about page on my website that lists the people.
Who's the main couple of figures?
Use them, but when I was Bacher, when I was 15, 16, so I found all these people who taught Hasidus or Hasidic thoughts. First one was someone, Rabbi Yitzchok Lowy. I don't know if you're familiar with it. A series of books called, originally titled just Hasidus with 3 exclamation marks, and it took off the exclamation marks. And Kabbalah and Hasidus, and there's Matel Zilber, if you know of the Stachina Rebbe from Borough Park. I listened to his shir like for 5 years straight, like every week. I started then.
So he was a Litvak, right? Who then came
Matel?
into
Not a Litvak. His family is Hasidish. His parents were Stachina Hasidim. He didn't invent being Stachin. He studied in Torah Vidas in mainstream American Litvish whatever. But his father-in-law was there. He has yeshivish background. He studied in Torah Vidas, but background is like Hasidish.
Right. So these are people who have a lot of Chabad Hasidus influence, correct?
Everyone. Yeah. Then I studied by the Morgenstern's Koil for like 2 years.
Itchemeyer.
Yeah, Itchemeyer. So yeah, all of these people are very Chabad influenced, and partially, like none of them are Lubavitchers.
They're not Deir Shvi Lubavitchers, but they're
Chabad, some sense of Chabad.
There's a difference between Lubavitch and Chabad, the way I understand it now.
Mm-hmm.
That Chabad is very broad, and it's not necessarily defined by the Deir Shvi Lubavitch movement that exists today.
Yeah, they all. I mean, none of these people are specifically like against the Lubavitch.
Right.
They've had their criticisms, but which they don't voice publicly.
Ask
them, you
can see they're very careful though publicly to make sure that they pay homage to.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean.
Yeah.
These are. But in general, like there's like, if I was saying these people and that people, like there's like a broader movement of people.
Yeah.
Yoni Garb has an article about the Hasidic Renaissance.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to all these people, and all of them are like one of the first places they look is Chabad, and mostly old Chabad, like
Alter Rebbe,
many people stay there. Rabbi Yitzchok, for example, reads only the Alter Rebbe, and he read all of it, like the whole shelf of Morad Merazoka, and he read the whole thing. But it didn't really read anything later than that.
Okay. So he's missing out.
Even Tzemach Tzedek, I'm sure he reads, but he's really a chassid of he calls him the Rav, like the Chassid used to call him. Ramatl did read like Rashab and all those things.
But
so,
I know Shammai is very into Rabban.
Yeah, I think that's his thing. The other, that's not something that's widely popular.
L'hagid shvachet shel Briaron, he's got this whole...
In Yerushalayim, there's someone, I forgot his name, who was a big Strashela Chassid.
He was Tolzan guy.
Tolzan
He passed away. His family's coming up then.
Kraus.
Madura. Kraus, yeah.
Yeah, so I knew some of his family also, actually, when I was living there. Yeah, so they're Strashela people. And what they find in Strashela, in many ways, is non-Lubavitch Chabad. Or more emotional Chabad.
It's interesting because that's why I differentiate between Der Shvi and the rest of Chabad, because there are people who don't affiliate with the Der Shvi Chabad, or Der Shmini if you like, which exists today, but are very much influenced by all the Chabad, all the Lubavitcher Rebbeim even. Yeah, so these are the people who you learn Chassidus from, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, La Fuke Rabbi Elkan, Melech Tzibel, and those kind of people.
I listened to some of his shirim, but it was not my better. But there is two parts in what draws people like me to those people. Mm-hmm. One is negative and one is positive. Negative in the sense of being shelo something else, like denying something else. And the denial is that whatever my Mashgiach in Yeshiva was saying was total nonsense. Not like nonsense as in wrong, just like nonsense as in contentless, right?
Yeah. Has no nefesh, or it's actual shtuyot?
Yeah, it's shtuyot. Nefesh would be good if that would be the only problem.
Okay.
It's just like these benign thoughts that make a huge deal about that are like nah.
It's very. Could you say it's more like self-help? Or you listen to a good mussar shmuz, it's more of a self-help type thing than rather like Tif and Yanim.
A good one. I don't think the ones that I heard were the good ones. No, the like standard what you get in like yeshivish world and also in Hasidic sort of standard world is very flat, very one-dimensional. There's only one dimension to everything. You could call that not nefesh, but like no complexity. There's never another side to anything.
Right. Or
if there is, it's next year and nobody really ever worried about reconciling the two sides of it. But even that is like already sophisticated level. Very one-dimensional and like very flat. Like doesn't do anything, I think. And then
it didn't do anything for you.
Yeah, okay.
Seems like it's doing a lot for some people.
I'm skeptical about who it does things for.
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah, for me, in the sense, both in like in the intellectual sense, someone that's how do you say Balkishran? I don't know how the word to say it in English.
Yeah.
And someone that has slightly more complex life, then yeah, it's not that. And then you go to the Matr Zilba, and it's like, besides for him being so good at what he does, it's also like a kasha on the other people. Like, how can they be so bad, and what do they think they're doing? Like, who gave them the right to hold a microphone if they don't even know the first thing?
Yeah, that's a trap, though, do you think? Thinking that way is a trap.
It's a trap because?
Because you can come to this false sense of security where you think, now you have something which no one else has. Until you realize, actually, a lot of people have this.
Yeah, I think so. I even think some of those teachers are in that trap.
Yeah.
It's a very hard trap to get out of because the criticism of the others is true. There's like a...
Their criticism of the others is correct, yes.
But also, maybe what you mean to say is some of these people get into their head that they're the only ones that discovered anything.
Yeah.
And they're not. In the Jewish world, there's always other people, and
in the world itself,
then for sure there's other people. But even
and sometimes even more profound, maybe.
Yeah.
Fish calls Orthodox Judaism post-Talmudic Judaism, which is really interesting. But the point is that just because the post-Talmudic Judaism of today is so bad, doesn't mean that someone who's better is everything.
More interesting is that after that, this like critical thinking part or socially critical part doesn't actually stop there. Like some people just buy into that cult and just become a chassid of whatever. And turns out that those teachers don't know everything. They often present as very open.
Surprise.
Yeah. I was surprised because not only they don't know anything. That's one problem. That I don't know if I expected anyone to know anything.
Everything.
But I expected the presentation of being open-minded to be more true. It turns out that there are certain very simple questions, or the word questions is bad, like certain very simple quests, which they totally just block off. Some of them are nicer about it, some of them are not nice about it, but...
There's places they're just not willing to go there.
Yeah, absolutely not. And so my quest went further than that.
Yeah. So let's stay with that for a moment, because I don't know if this is what you're talking about exactly, but I remember when I was a bacher, probably long before you were a bacher, I remember listening to Rabbi Yitzchok, and Rabbi Yitzchok was explaining why. It was like they used to have the koil, maybe they still do in Crown Heights. I don't really spend a lot of time there, but they used to have the koil behind 770. Is it still there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rabbi used to bring there sometimes in the evenings. So he was explaining why the Mishchistim were wrong. In other words, he was the Avi voice of the Mishchistim, and then recanted. And his explanation for why they were wrong was a classical atheist explanation. And he didn't even realize it. What he was explaining was really the same explanation that atheists give for why religion is wrong. But he would never take that argument there, which is really interesting. Like, you have a lot of people, they're very intellectual on the one hand. I don't know if this is what you're saying. And they're very smart, but they won't.
Interesting thing. Yeah.
They won't take their own arguments to their logical conclusions.
Yeah, like if someone, that's like a criticism. But if someone would say, okay, that's a good question, but that's just what I believe, it's already better than. In some sense, I don't want to frame it that way, because that's like an answer already. I would leave it as a question, meaning, like, sometimes you think, and this is what, when I started getting out, so like I had this discussion with many people, and like the framing that I got was like, okay, so everyone's in a box. The question is how big the box is.
Yeah.
You found the people that are slightly in a bigger box. Thank you very much. We're still in a box.
Yeah. But I saw your Shurim on the Mori Nevuchim, for example. When you learn the Mori Nevuchim, when I learned the Mori Nevuchim properly the first time, I felt the Rambam was in a box as well. My disappointment of the Mori Nevuchim was that, yes, it's a bigger box, but the box is still there.
Yeah, I get this. That's why I don't so much like this framing of the box, of this like way of thinking about it. I think that it's not helpful enough. And I would look for a better way to do it. Because I'm also in the box, obviously, if you think about it, like, objectively. Yeah. Like, besides for like specific things that I probably tell you I believe, but also just from the conditions that I am in and the world that I live in and so on.
By definition, you have to be in a box.
Right.
Because everything is context dependent.
Exactly. So that's why I would try to think of it in a better way. So my tan on Rabbi Yitzchok, for example, I know exactly what you're talking about. Happens to me. And actually, Rabbi Yitzchok is very blind to his own like limitations. There's other people like Chaskel Sefer who wrote the same arguments, and he does sort of realize that it's a question on Yiddishkeit and sort of tries to answer it. So that a step better.
Okay. Self-awareness, a little bit of additional self-awareness.
But I think that the better way of framing that argument would be something in the vicinity of the Madla Shen Chalem and Yedeh. The Yedeh might be, if someone comes from an entirely different framework, I can't answer this question. I can't answer. I don't know how to listen to your question because you're living in a different world, and
it's a different context.
Things, and there's no way to bridge that, or at least would take sometimes like would take 20 years, or just allowing the act of this quest or this question to be what it is.
Yeah.
So, but I'm getting like an answer already. You wanted to know the question.
No. So it's interesting because I was listening to one of you Shurim and you were talking about, you said something which made me sit up. Mostly I don't hear anything which makes me sit up. Every so often I hear someone says something which makes me sit up. And you said that the Rambam basically ruined the Gemara because the whole point of the Gemara was this whole idea of they don't come to Maskanas. Menachem Fish, to quote him again, because anyone should go back and listen to the episode, because he basically says that the Savaroim, when it says the halacha is like whoever, that's all the Savaroim. In other words, the Amoraim themselves, they didn't care about ever getting to a maskana. It was all about the discussion and the question and so you said that the Rambam with Mishnah Torah basically ruined that.
Yeah, I said that this week.
Yeah.
It's recent, so I still remember. Otherwise, I don't remember what I said. Yeah.
But I mean, that's very much the Shitascha.
Right.
In other words, acknowledging that the question is, you can probably...
Yeah, that's why I tried to think of it not as like intellectual limitation, because we all have intellectual limitations. You can't have Tanas on someone that he's intellectually limited, like he lives in a certain world with certain paradigms and things. Like that's just what humans are.
Yeah.
I think that if there's something to be said, it's about switching intellectual criticism to a kind of moral or ethical, even emotional, I don't know, something in that vicinity criticism, where it's like you should be a little more humble about what you actually know. One of the biggest problems, things against humility and what you know, is this thing called faith. which is an excuse for people to say that they know things that they don't know. And even if you say that faith means not knowing, then you should say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you say, I believe, and that's better than knowledge. No, it's worse.
Yeah.
It might be all we have. Okay.
Yeah. It's the mistake that people make conceptually, that they confuse knowledge with belief. If you know, you don't need the belief for it.
So in any ways, so I sort of dropped off that path in the sense of, can't say dropped off.
But what was the inflection point?
I don't know. I don't have a good story for that. I also see it as continuous. Like there's a search, and since this is not enough, there has to be more. And although everyone has their limits, like ad kan tova, this is out of the bounds, that never really spoke to me. So,
what you might say, you graduated those people?
Yeah, I like that terminology. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I actually think that the positive things that they taught are still correct in the sense of have content.
Yeah.
True, as in like the
value.
truth. I don't know, that they're worth something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the precise thing that led me to them also led me beyond them.
Yeah.
And then beyond them is beyond everything, a lot, like beyond a lot, beyond everything.
Because most people don't even get there.
Right. Like when I talk to people sometimes, like first I have to convince you that you shouldn't be a skver chassid. You should be a matazil chassid. And then I have to convince you to be, hello, like there's a lot of distance between me and that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking very different languages, or conceptually very different.
Right.
There's a long journey to go. So at some point you realized that what they were offering is limited, and then therefore you came up with a new.
Well, no. So, and like in a more serious sense, that's one of, not only they're limited. Like all of Yiddishkeit is very limited, and at least Orthodoxy. I'm not allowed to say this, but in any case, yeah, they're just like very much in this. The interesting thing about these people is that anyone that has any content really isn't limited by Yiddishkeit, but didn't realize it. Like the ideas, if there's some good ideas in somewhere, then they can be translated to any context or to any language. You don't have to like believe that God gave the Torah on Har Sinai for Chassidus to make sense. Those are things that are totally disconnected. Not totally disconnected. If there's a content, if there's something that works, then it works. Doesn't work because it was revealed or something. So that's why these two things are not entirely in opposition to each other. Like what these people teach, or what like Chassidus in the broad sense teaches, Kabbalah, all these kind of things. These are really like philosophies or life philosophies, if you want to make sure it's not just intellectual. But the part of it being framed very much in a certain way, or part of a certain package of dogma and belief, so that very much fell away. And that also means that we need to, and that's what I started doing, then you need to be able to intellectually at least talk about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I think of myself as being very funny and like naive, and like to me I was like very smart because I'm able to talk about which Rebbe is a true Rebbe, like Idl Bauch Rebbe Mashiach, whatever. That wasn't something that I ever believed, but like that's a question. Like, no, now I'm so smart, I'm so open-minded, we could like discuss it, but you can't discuss who wrote the Chumash, right? That like total, not only you can't discuss it, right? It's not a question that you think is a question. Like, why would you discuss if blue is green? Like it's we're entering into your worldview.
It's mufrach.
Yeah, it's just outside of like reason, like outside of the world. And once you can discuss that, so you can do everything. Mostly, I just wanted to not be treated as a dumb. That's the biggest ego thing. Since I consider myself intellectual, I don't like when people treat me as dumb. And I don't like when my religion treats me as dumb. Dumb in the sense of like, you should not discuss this. Why not? Or like the Hasidic thing, like you should have a minhag pshuta. Why should I do that? That sounds like you're trying to sell me something. Why would I even be in that neighborhood? So that's all. That's where we are. No, it sounds too bad now.
No, to me it actually resonates a lot. But I'm interested in the tiyufta, right? In a sense, the kasha. living in that tension of, you have all these questions. I bring up my kids with very lot of leeway. My boys are already older, so they've already more or less picked a path. My son once said to me, because he went to perhaps you could call it Lithuanian yeshiva in Denver, and he said sometimes he looks at his friends and he thinks that it would be better if he was just given a path like his friends were. Just given a path. This is the path you're on. I never gave my kids a path. Neither did my wife. We didn't say you have to be on this path. You have to be in that path. Eventually you'll see all the paths because in the family, in the schools, etc., you'll choose one. He said maybe it would have been easier if he had been given a path. And a lot of people, they want to be given. It becomes complex when you have all these questions and no answers. So they're going to shy away from it. And maybe these teachers know if they leave it open-ended, no one's going to be attracted to that. People are attracted to people who know.
Right.
So living in this area, how do you operationalize it? That's kind of like the key question. How do you operationalize living in an area where there are questions with no answers? Where there's no Savarim coming in saying halacha is like so-and-so.
So there's my answer, and then there's an education question, which I don't know how to answer. My answer boils down to that there's something that I do know, or that's the way to say it, although it's complicated, which is that I know that I want to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I believe is good. Could it be justified? How? Different problem. But this is what the reality, in the sense of what my life really runs on. And I could see this from looking at the fixed in all the variety. My life had all kind of different stages, and sometimes I read this, and sometimes that, and sometimes I believe this, and sometimes that, and sometimes I do this, and sometimes that.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I always did and always do is to think.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say to learn, but think is a better word.
Read.
Yeah, but also not that. That's even more than think. Sometimes you think with people that are dead, so you have to read their books because it's hard to talk with dead people. But other than that, it's think. So that's for me. And I'm not the only one. You see, I see people all the people that I love. Really, I think of them like that. Whether they really were like that or not, I don't know. It's a historical question. But I think of them as people that were in love with the discussion,
Mm-hmm.
with the argument, and they were much less you can't read whatever. The Beit Midrash is a complicated question, but I think the Zohar is even more open book than the Beit Midrash in some way, and you can't read it as people who are lachutz, very worried. We have to sometimes have people so we're gonna daven mincha in the end. Is there a God? I don't know. We can't learn like this. That's not a way to think. You want either daven mincha or don't daven mincha. No shaykhs. But they were consistent in their actual learning, in their thinking, studying, searching, whatever you want to call it. Learning might not only be intellectually learning, maybe doing other things. But I think that's account at least, and it's hard for me to say. It's what is this based on? I don't know. It's based on the reality that my life has identified this as something that I really want to do, and I'm sort of always doing. So then that's something that I can rely on. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's also pretty safe because you can't flag it up. There's going to be another question, so that's another question.
Yeah, it's interesting because one might argue that that's the truest place to be, because when you have answers, there's a certain amount of yeshus involved. I see it with the Rabbanim. I saw it when I worked in corporate America with employees of mine, that there's this fear of being seen as not knowing the answers. So what do? No one knows everything, as you mentioned. So they make as if they know. Now, people don't understand and don't realize that he's just fudging it, or he's making it up, or he doesn't really know what he's talking about, because most people aren't educated enough to know that whoever this individual Rav or expert, so-called expert, is making it up or is fudging it. But there's this pressure to show that you know and you can answer everything, when really no one knows everything. And then that kind of builds on itself to a level of arrogance, which is becomes to a gas ruach, because they have to kind of keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
The humility of saying I don't know is more likely that that's where God is than the people who know everything.
Yeah. Now you're making theological claims, but yeah. It makes sense.
I didn't make an absolute theological claim. I said more likely.
Yeah.
I didn't make a claim. I made a svara.
Yeah, there are ways to make this claim, of course. But yeah, because of honesty, because God is truth, or whatever God is has to be truth.
Or is undefinable.
Yeah, that's already another. We could, if you move it to like an ethical thing, it's more simple. Like say it's true, or honest. The interesting thing is that, firstly, it's very hard. I give classes and I often fudge things when I don't know that. Like a class has to have a beginning and middle. What am I going to do if I'm like, wait, I'm really confused about this subject. I have no idea. Again.
It's interesting because the people I've ended up respecting the most are the people who've been able to tell me I don't know. It's like that's a sign of true greatness, of people who are able to live with that and in front of that vulnerability of saying they don't know, because they're so in touch with who they are that it doesn't matter to them they don't know. In other words, what you think of me doesn't matter. To them it doesn't matter, because they've got to a place where it truly doesn't matter to them, and therefore, okay, I don't know. People who can do that, to me, is a sign of true greatness. There's a famous physicist from Oxford, Roger Penrose. If you ever look at any of his interviews, he's always saying, I don't know. He's like, I don't know. You know, it's like, this is the greatest physicist almost alive today, and he doesn't know so much. You know, so.
Right. So I don't have very good role models for doing that. I do have, but not the same ones as the ones that teach anything. But I feel like there's a way to do that.
But even to strive to live in that place of I don't know, that could be a derech, in other words.
So I would make one. This is why I'm like apprehensive when you start talking about God being undefinable and things. So I would make one qualification to that, which is I might know. When you say I don't know because there's nothing to be known, or because the truth is ineffable or whatever, I don't know. How do you know that? So what I think that it better, like what I think, and also for other reasons, what I think is, I don't know, I might be able to figure out, maybe there's something I could learn, maybe I could think myself, maybe I could learn from someone, and so my attitude is less of, I don't know and I'm happy. I'm comfortable with not knowing, because if you're not comfortable, then you don't have space to learn anything. Mm-hmm. I think that, adults stop being able to learn at some age, and it's mostly because they stop being able to not know things. Mm-hmm. But then I do want to learn things. Whether those things will be 1,000%, necessarily true or useful, doesn't matter. But we need to be open to learn things. And maybe we could describe God, which humans didn't figure it out yet. Maybe we need better technology. I don't know. Everyone is very fast to jump to this, God is ineffable. Maybe it's describable by some yet uninvented language. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on that. Because it's like having an opinion on the unknown. So
I guess you can.
Yeah.
I don't know either.
What I know is Ace Ato. In the current, I haven't met anyone who can properly describe themselves, never mind God. Right? So when you find me someone who can actually describe themselves fully, then and I've never met that person. The best description I've come to is someone who says that they are that which experiences, which doesn't really tell you much. So it could be in the future there might be someone. Yeah, is it knowable? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that some people who claim it's knowable, and not only that, they know exactly what God wants, and not only what God wants, but what God needs. Apparently, they know too.
I'm just trying to keep the actual openness to learning there, because some of the not knowing language leads to another way of not being able to learn anything. That's what I mean.
Oh, but you mean then I'll never know?
Yeah, something like, or
it's
maybe
like it's impossible to know.
The essence is unknowable, but there's still a lot to know. That's not the essence, which is also important. Things like that.
Yeah, the negative attribute theology is one which it's saying it's unknowable, but that doesn't mean that I should stop learning.
Right. That Ram wrote a whole chapter to deny this. Have a minute. No, everything you learn is really that, and you're gonna know better how not. Okay, figure it out how it works. But,
yeah, so you can say it's not knowable to the human condition, but that doesn't mean I should stop learning.
But there's still progress to be made.
Yeah. Endless progress to be made. Right.
Again, at least enough for my lifetime.
Right.
Who knows? After that, we'll find out.
Right.
Like in Alman Hashemes, we'll see if there's.
and your Pirush on that's next year in your shiurim.
Yeah, maybe.
So this Beit Midrash that you have here, I mean, you have it online. It's also on on YouTube, and then you have people come here for shiurim.
Yeah, here, and I go to them also.
Right.
And it's just for me to have friends.
That's why I do this podcast, by the way.
That's why.
Like, it's a pretense to be able to tell interesting people, hey, I want to talk to you. Because otherwise, it's more difficult to break the ice. So you have a podcast, now you can actually have a pretense to actually send someone an email and say, hey, can I sit down and talk to you for an hour?
Yeah, turns out you could do it without a podcast too. I've tried it. Most people are more open than you think they are.
Yeah.
You probably know that too. But yes. And
with the podcast, can be mishtat of other people in it.
Yeah, also. But that's also because you want those other people to be your friends, the listeners.
There's certainly a certain social aspect to it.
Yeah, like it's hard. In other words, the problem that I'm solving is that it's very hard to have friends in this when you get to this. I think that all the teachers that I had, or the people that we were discussing before, are at the end very lonely people. Their loneliness causes them. It's because of all the kinds of mechitzas that they build up around themselves, and it causes them to create more barriers around themselves. And it's true that, like, again, the reason they have barriers is correct. Most of the people that they come into contact with are 10,000 levels below them, and they could be nice, but it's not. No dialogue can happen.
Yeah.
And the other one person that you can actually have a dialogue has done the same lonely journey and ended up in a different peak, and now you can't really.
They're not relating to each
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not fellow travelers.
They're not fellow travelers. They might have arrived at the same peak, but not in the same way, or in a different peak. I don't know. They're not. Yeah, there's very little. They don't have colleagues. Lubavitch Rebbe didn't have any colleagues, right? Or take any great teacher that you know of. Almost none of them have colleagues, in the sense of people that they see as on their level, and they might disagree. Of course, they're going to disagree with them. It's very hard for them not to. There's very little of that, and I also think that there's very little progress to be made that way. Like what happens is, or what I find happening is, and again, I'm starting from the side of the student, and then we'll see what happens on the other side. But what I find is that you get a bunch of people, each of who sells a certain set of beliefs, things to do, communities, and so on. And what these beliefs are, or what the basic theory is, was set 20 years ago when the guy was still learning. Now he's just teaching, you're not learning anything anymore. Yeah. And now you could either buy it or not, but there isn't anything else to do with it. And what I think is, or what I wanted is, I felt that was not nice to me. Like, you asked me to come listen to your shiurim, and I'm going to spend 100 million hours figuring out what you're saying, but then I'm going to have a good kasha, and you're going to just like say, okay, what should I do? But this is my mahalach. Well, why did I listen to you?
You mean you expect that at some point they should take it seriously enough to re-question their mahalach?
To make progress. I don't know. Question your mahalach is, again, very much.
No, I'm saying not the whole mahalach, at least this part of your mahalach.
Like, I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to listen to you. You told me you have to read up on these sources. We'll do that. Maybe it will take me 10 years to do it, or 20. I don't know. But at the end, at least at some point, I want to be respected. Again, talking about my...
Yeah, you'll eventually become on their level if you're smart enough.
So that's the problem. So then if you come on their level, then you don't talk with them either. Because people on their level don't...
But it's interesting, at my age, so...
They respect each other, but they don't talk to each other.
Yeah. So I find myself at the age of 47, where a lot of the people who are thinking and saying really interesting things are a lot younger than me. And they have a lot to teach me. My generation has a certain... I talk about this chaverim my age. Some of them, there aren't that many, but those who have gone through this, we recognize that the younger generation have something which we literally didn't have, and no one in our generation had. Like, your phenomena almost didn't exist of people in my age. I don't know how old you are, but I'm supposing you're quite a bit younger than me.
Yeah, I'm 36.
You're 36, okay, yeah. So you're 11 years younger than I am. But people of my age, when we hit that, let's call it crisis, that you're talking about, there wasn't a way to have a continuation within the miskeres. So a lot of us, somehow, we left the miskeres. Either totally left it, or we said there's nothing else to do here.
Right.
And we graduated and then moved on our own way. We weren't looking necessarily for community from the people within the miskeres who would kind of join us. We realized that this is the miskeres and it's not serving our needs anymore. And there's a lot of the issues that you mentioned, a lot of people have recognized that. And you just do your own thing next. What you have in the younger generation, your generation and younger, is which is beautiful. And I'm learning from this, is that people who say, no, I'm not leaving the miskeres. This is still who I am. This is still my miskeres. And I'm going to recreate it in the way I think it needs to be. Which I have an unbelievable amount of derech eretz for, because I think it's very, very hard to do. And we just never, maybe we never had the azah to do it. or
there's generational stories in this all.
Yeah, there's generational issues in it for sure. But what I find is that the people who are doing really interesting things are usually a decade or so younger than me. So, and there's a lot to learn from those people. It takes a certain humility to say that someone a lot younger than you
Right.
has actually recognized something perhaps that you didn't recognize, and you've got something to learn from them. But why not? Why shouldn't that be the case? I mean, it's obvious that should be the case.
Could be.
It's like, there are people who are smarter than us. But I don't care who you are. You're never the smartest person in the world. There's always someone smarter. There's always someone wealthier. I don't care how wealthy you are. There's always someone better looking. There's always, even if you're in the top, percentile or whatever it is. And if you meet those people, you should learn from them. So this phenomenon of people who think that they've reached, I don't care who you are, you could be, the greatest Rebbe who ever lived in the 21st century. There are people you can learn from. To me, it's got a chesron. In other words, it tells me something negative about these people. They didn't have peers.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me anything positive about them.
I understand 100%. There's like, I think I understand why it is, and I don't know that I have a good solution for the problem. In other words, when I say this about myself, it's me somewhat committing or somewhat promising or praying or something to not become like that.
But what about become lamdai iskalti? In other words, there
are people that are better at doing that, but there's levels of this.
What's also interesting is you find people like Zalman Schachter, for example, who I knew, spent some time with, although I can't say I had a very close relationship with him. But he opened himself up to not just within the Jewish context,
right?
But outside of the Jewish context. And now you've got a really broad and diverse peer group to learn from.
Yes, and no. Do you think Reb Zalman had peers?
Yeah.
He did?
Yeah, for sure. And Reb Zalman was the kind of person, he actually called me up one day and he wanted to learn Chassidus with me. So he said, come to my house. Actually, I came to his house and we sat, and in my foolishness at the time, I turned him down. And I said that I wasn't going to learn from him, but I came to his house. We sat for 3 hours without any microphones.
That's interesting. Okay.
And he was very gracious. But I think that he was very open to actually learning one-on-one with people. But I don't know. I didn't know.
I've also heard questions on this. I know that he presented himself that way. And I forget who told me that it was just a presentation. Someone that knew him. Doesn't matter. This is just Lashon Hara. It doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
But anyways, in other words, it's hard.
Is it a real thing that people don't have peers? Or is this something that you get to a certain age where you become, you're so cut off from other people that you think that you've become a gadol? In other words,
so there's of course all of these things.
Because you see narishkeit from these big rabbanim, and I read, I'm not going to name names, but no matter who you read and you say, this is narishkeit. The biggest goyim, the people who people hold as the biggest rabbis, and you read some of their, and you say they make simple mistakes. And if they had peers, perhaps they wouldn't make those mistakes.
I won't hope. I think, since I'm thinking about this problem, I would think that it needs a systemic answer instead of just saying you have to have better midas or you always have to have better midas. But
right.
Instead of saying that, you have to just remember there has to be some kind of structure for that. I don't know what that structure would look like, right? There's different structural issues that you can notice that you see that the problem is not with specific people. Like the problem is with the structures that they set up or that they work within. It's very hard to set up your own structure entirely. Like, you could talk about the problem of succession, right? Which is somewhat connected to this problem, okay?
Yep.
And some of the greatest Jewish leaders of the 20th century not only didn't have successors, they just totally missed the boat on thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just this week's parsha.
There's a lot more examples than.
No, but think about this week's parsha. The first thing Moshe Rabbeinu was worried about. He's like, he knows he's going to die.
Okay.
Then he's worried about it.
That's.
He's like, and that's missing from a lot of people because they think somehow, ich gehe in Himmel und die Svarm lasse ich euch, they can say, you've got my teachings. You don't need anything else.
Right, and there's a serious question about this, and I don't know, and it's like easy to criticize from sitting here in the back and like telling the Rebbe what he should have done. Meaning to say, we might be correct in seeing something that he can't see, but also it's not that we have a solution. And it seems like whenever I think about this, I think that the solution has to be not in the sense of like some people say, whichever Rebbe they're talking about, he should have just made a clear tzava, this. No, that's nonsense. The reason he didn't make a tzava is because he lives in a system that doesn't allow him to do that. And even if he does do that, it doesn't solve the problem, just makes it worse. There's examples for that. Like the problem is that we don't know what the dead Rebbe wanted. That's never the problem. The problem is that the system is set up in a certain way that whatever it doesn't have a succession plan in place. And in other words, sometimes people say, and this is, I'll tell you in a Hasidic way, or in my Hasidic world, like sometimes we say this. There's this ideal also, but there's like a story that people say that goes like this. Originally, it used to be that there were Rebbes, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, the Chayes, they were Rebbes, and they made students, and then those students were the next generation of Rebbes, and so on. At some point, they stopped happening, and whatever, there's dynasties and all kind of things.
Yeah.
And then, and in other words, like ideally, since this whole Hasidic Renaissance has this promise of we're going to redo the same thing, happens to be some of them already died and their children, they're the same, they just started new dynasties. Nothing actually changed. And I'm thinking about this, why? And the reason is because our understanding of this situation was always very, very naive. Of course, the reason why there are no students anymore, well, besides for all the other reasons that monarchies are the most stable or the most predictable human institution, keep on popping up. It's not like something that we invented, whether you like it or not. But aside for that, there's also, it's not something that can be just answered, like, I'm going to be a good person and not just give my children whatever.
Yeah.
And the only
That's
thing,
assuming that means that they're bad people for doing that, which is
they
not necessarily the case.
They might even be correct. I'm not even getting that. But I'm saying, if you want, for example, if you have this ideal of like, well, if you're a teacher, like this question, if you're a teacher, you should have students that are at least almost as good as you.
Yeah.
And doesn't look like most of these teachers have that. Or not all of them, many of them. Like, why isn't there like a 80% Lubavitcher Rebbe? Forget about there not being 100%. Nobody could be the Rebbe. Okay. Why isn't the top chassid, why isn't he 80% of the Rebbe? Right? And he isn't. He's not even 10%.
How do you know?
I happen to know them.
No. But you didn't know him. You didn't know the Rebbe.
Okay, could be it's a myth. Some of it is a myth and some of it is, well, okay, it's more complicated. But okay, so why do we have this myth? Okay, we can
No, because the people worked very hard to create that myth.
Very good. But who created the myth? The Rebbe is not like a passive participant in the myth, right? He was creating.
At least he didn't object strongly to the myth.
Right. So therefore, what I would think of is, I'm not actually sure that. Okay, I don't know. That's a different question. I don't know enough details for this specific case, but I think that in general, it's somewhat true that there isn't anyone even 80%, or at least the look 80% as in being a Talmid Chacham, easy in the sense of learn for 50 years, you'll be there. Easy in the sense of Chassidus, also easy. There's people that could do Amarim just like Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't have a question of that. They don't have practice, so they don't do it, but. There's people that can do it.
They could learn it.
But I think that the thing that leadership, that's something that you have to actually do. And in other words, and this is also in Rashi, and if you were talking about Parshas Pinchas, in other words, if you want to be a Rebbe that has a more sane succession plan than not only the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Sam Rebbe, they all have the same issue. Mm-hmm. You have to start when you start being a Rebbe, not when you finish.
Yeah.
Right? And that was Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua ben Nun wasn't the guy that showed up, and he was there the whole time.
Moshe Rabbeinu cared about this from day one.
And that's what, Rashi says that he still wanted his son to be.
Yeah, that's extra textual kind of.
Yeah, but there's also the extra, it says in the same, it's at least how the Rashi reads the pasuk that it says, make him the Rebbe when you're still alive, right? We have the same story by David and
Yeah.
Shem. Like, you can't expect to die and then the Chassidim will listen to what you're told them. You have to... So in other words, you have to create a system in which maybe the Rebbe is only first among equals. And that's the way you act your whole life. It's not something like...
Which is not how it's set up, because there's this thing of a tzaddik, which is...
Right, and interestingly, if we have this like myth, it's also a myth of like the Baal Shem Tov working like that. That's because the Baal Shem Tov was less of a Rebbe in this sense, right? He was the first among equals, amongst a group of great people.
Yeah.
And same thing for the Maggid of Mezrich. And later, in any area where you see that this worked this way, it was because the Rebbe was less of a Rebbe. Less of the pedestal Rebbe, right? There was some Chabura, we have this like idea as well. But this has to be set up from the first second. And also you have
it's interesting on this in the Kudah, because I'm reading through Reb Aaron Sarshada's Chassidus, and you don't find this dichotomy between a Beini and a Tzaddik very strongly there, number one. And I was just learning in Shar Avodah, in the second Shar, where he talks about that, about Tshuva. And he goes to town on about Tshuva, and the Shama, which comes out from the Gimel Klippos HaTmeis. And then he adds, like a footnote is that even tzaddikim have somewhat of the avodah of a Baal Tshuva with them, etc., etc. There's hinting to this idea that even tzaddikim do avera sometimes in order to be ma'ila from the Shalosh Klippos HaTmeis, etc. But in other words, tzaddikim are trying to become like the Baalei Tshuva. The top of the pile is certainly not the Beini. It's not the tzaddik, but it's the Baal Tshuva, who the tzaddik has to aspire somehow to become the Baal Tshuva. In other words, there's much more of a flattening in his thought than you have in the latter Hasidic dynasties. So it starts off in the ideology, I think.
Yeah, it's always...
Which puts the tzaddik
you know
so
that
much higher.
The Chabad reading of the Benoni and the tzaddik being the Chassid and the Rebbe is Lubavitch reading. It's not what it says in the Tanya.
Yeah. And certainly...
It almost says in the Tanya, but it doesn't.
It's certainly... That's what I'm saying. From Aaron doesn't read it that way at all. He doesn't... It's clear that Aaron doesn't see it that way.
There's a famous piece that I just met it this week also, because Rabbi Yitzchok Lowy was very impressed by it. The Rabbi Yitzchok said, quotes from his Rebbe, that in the Kis Varizal there's the idea of like different neshamas with different levels, and he says that the definition of whatever Ikvus the Mashiach or whatever he calls his generation is that there's not such a thing. Everyone is everything. It's like explicit. I don't know if you know. I could find it for you. It's like explicit thing where like nobody is just the neshama of a lamdan or just of a balabas or just of a whatever.
I think I've seen this.
Everyone is jumbled up. So that's very explicitly against that kind of born tzaddikim or whatever. So there's that.
And he even talks about the avoid tzaddikim, is this idea of the shemus. So you have the avoid of the beinanim, which is isponus, etc. And then once you graduate that, you can then go to the avoid tzaddikim, which is b'miyachid yuchudim. What?
That's what you wanted to talk about, right?
We can talk about that too, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, and you can do that. It's not.
What I'm saying is that's, in other words, there's explicitly a pathway of getting there. It's not like halavai beini. It's actually you go through the beini to become a tzaddik, and maybe it's like one day you are a tzaddik, next day you're not, and it's not. In other words, it's not this thing that you're born into and it's given milamilo as a matana. Yeah. It's much more accessible if you want to dedicate your life to that direction.
I never bought this ideology, so I can't really talk to you about it. Like I never thought of it. Wasn't taught it also.
Which
the
part?
tzaddik whole thing. So I'm thinking without this. In other words, I'm thinking more of like the reality. There is a Rebbe, and the Rebbe often is. I could see why it becomes like this, and so I'm saying that what I see this only solution is very hard, and I've been trying to work on some things in that direction with my friends. It's very hard also, because forget about Hasidic theology, about tzaddiks and stuff, okay? You were by the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Verbringens ever? Were you?
Yeah.
You didn't understand. You were like a kid, or
he passed away when I was 15.
Okay.
So I wasn't. Certainly, when I went to the Verbringen, which I did as a kid, I certainly didn't understand it.
Right. Okay, so see, that's something very weird, right? So I asked many people this question, like the 5 about like a little older Lubavitcher people that I know. Like I read the Verbringens, right? So like a Verbringen is like 6 shurim packed into one.
Yeah. In
between there's some songs and l'chaims and whatever, and it's like what kind of Rosh Yeshiva does this? like he would say a shir, like it's called a sikha, but just a shir on Rashi, and then another shir on whatever other subject he was on, and then one on politics, and then some Mamre Chassidus, which is totally different. And what kind of way of teaching is this? Do you notice that's like you could do this? You could open a yeshiva. You do Sunday. I try to do this, right? Sunday you'll give the Rashi Sikha. Monday you'll do the Chassidus. Tuesday you'll do politics. Wednesday whatever other nigla and so on. In other words, it doesn't look like he was trying to teach anyone anything. And I've spoken to people. The effect of the Rebbe was, wow, the Rebbe is a huge guy. He's amazing. Like 5 people at the packed room and 500 people. I don't know how many people fit in over there. And I think like 3 of them would follow the discussion. And you can go to the Chazara later. By the way, I've watched those Chazaras. You don't follow it either then. And the people, I'm not sure if the Chazrim understood like the logic of the flow. They just memorized the words. It's very hard. It's not that hard because, by the way, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a good Maggid Shir. He does know how to explain himself and he tells everything at length, so you could sort of follow along. But there's always like a mahalach that he's building and it's like a shir. You have to learn the sugya first.
You can chazal the shir.
What?
Some people if someone gives a good shir, you can chazal the shir.
Yeah, you could, but also you have to learn.
Every Bachar Yeshiva does that. You prepare for the shir, then you listen to the shir, and then you chazal the shir.
For the shir of Rashi, and sometimes he would even tell you which Rashi was about, apparently. That's what I've read, that they used to be machres, after Shachres, that I was going to talk about this and this Rashi sometimes. But I don't think it wasn't set up in a way that, maybe there were some Bachrim that had some shir or whatever to figure it out. But
so you're saying he wasn't trying to teach? For the most part, I don't know. It was the setup of a Rebbe singing by Fabrengan and giving a shir, and he knows that there's women, there's children, there's some people, like there's a 10%, let's say 10% that are relevant to listening to the discussion, but most of them are not. So it turns into something very funny. Yeah,
you get my problem.
No, I'll tell you a little anecdote. So when we were kids, we lived in London, and the Rebbe used to farbreng, and my mother was a big chasida. She still is. She's a very pious woman, and she used to take us to the farbrengs. The farbrengs usually started like 1 o'clock in the morning because we were in England. And we would wake up and we would want to, and we would go there, and everyone fell asleep in the middle. And even the guy who was trying to translate, he fell asleep. And it was like, but it was more of this show of dedication,
right, than
anything else. At least from my recollection. Other people who will be listening to this will disagree with me fully, I'm sure. But that was the way I perceived that as a kid.
Yeah, and it was very inspiring or whatever, but not learning. And it's weird because the medium is learning. And so what am I getting at? Yeah, so in other words, it's not the reason why he doesn't have students, he only has chassidim, is because he doesn't try to make them. And another thing is that it's much more fun. It's easier for him. I don't know if it's easier. It's hard. There's a hardship in being lonely like this. And I know even Lubavitcher would get frustrated about this sometimes. Like, nobody listens. Nobody really cares. But my Pshat and Rashi is correct. It's just the Rebbe said a sikha. But if you do that, then you open yourself up to a lot of criticism, right? In other words,
someone's going to ask you a question in the shir.
He might be right. Even not in the shir. Let's say you make it like a very covered. Like nowadays, there's not a shiv they could. And it used to be, that I've seen even video pictures. Like it used to be like a big Litvish shivas would say a shir. Like Rabbi Kotler would say a shir. Okay, you couldn't argue with him. People argue with him anyways, and he would get mad and throw shtenders at you and crazy stuff. And he would. I've listened to someone they would argue with him and he would when he would get very mad, he would get him out of his from Beit Midrash. And the guy was smart, so he went out before got to that stage. And he got where's the guy? No, bring him back and throw him out. But that was you understand that at least some of the people by that shir will grow up to be able to say a shir.
Yeah.
Because he respects you, he wants you to agree with him, and he gives you his pshat, and he assumes that you covered the material before, so you know the sugya and so on. And that's not something it doesn't happen anywhere for anything besides for lamdas. That basically also requires inviting people or making a way to have discussions with people that are at the level, and it's very hard. You have to give those people a lot more respect than you have to give your chassidim.
Let me tell you a little story here because you bring to mind, and maybe the audience would appreciate this or not. But there was a guy called Diane Fisher who lived in London, and he was the Av Basin of the Federation at the time, and he was also the Rabbi Emirates of the shul I used to go to. So it was Diane Gershon Alpin was the Rav, And then Dayan Fisher was like the Emirates Rav, and Dayan Lopin had a lot of covers from him. So whenever he came, he gave the drasha. So we all knew him as kids. We knew him. He was a very, very nice guy. He was like an old school Rav. And he was known as a Baki B'Shas and a big guy. And anyway, he went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe made a big tzimis for him, right? He gave him a lot of cover. Shabbos, he gave a special, or maybe it was during the week, I don't remember, a special sikh of him, etc. So I was a young bacher, a chassid, and I wanted to call up Dayan Fisher and ask him, like, what he thought of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So I get on the phone, and I call Dayan Fisher's house, and Dayan Fisher answers the phone. I said, I'm a Levi Brackman. I go to the Yeshurun synagogue, which was like, it wasn't a Chabad shul, right? I was brought up in an area of London which wasn't Chabad. My father never became a Lubavitcher. My mother did. So I'm asking Dayan Fisher, and I say to him, what were your impressions of the Lubavitcher when you met him? He goes, no, it's just that off. But I'd heard him talk about the Lubavitcher Rebbe with such amazing, like he used to come to Fabrengens, and he would talk about the Lubavitcher Rebbe with such glowing. So I said to him, like, but obviously you spoke to him in Torah. Was there anything which you impressed you? No, it's just a regular Rav. It's like a Tam Chacham, yeah, but nothing. I couldn't, and I was like, this is the same guy who came to the Fabrengen and told us so glowingly about the Rebbe. And I keep pushing him. Eventually, he says to me, "You a Lubavitcher?" I said to him, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh!" And all of a sudden, he changed his whole tune. "Oh, the biggest guy ever." There is a certain amount of people tell you what they think you want to hear. In other words, Be'etzem, maybe he wasn't that impressed, but he wants to give chizuk to me, to my Rebbe. No one's going to tell.
Right.
No older person is going to tell you about your Rebbe that he was just a regular kind of Talmud Chacham. They're always going to say he's your Rebbe. So anyway, like perhaps to his own peers, in other words, like there's a certain type of like, when you get to the top, there's a certain fear that you might have. All these people whom my Chassidim, Talmidim are worshipping me. If it turns out that maybe I'm not so great, so you have to insulate yourself. That's why I'm saying that's the danger of this whole thing. When you insulate yourself and you don't have peers, you can make mistakes. Then you can end up making really big mistakes. And everyone follows you. You can literally take your Hasidim, your Talmidim out of Judaism without anyone telling them.
Yeah, right. And so, but it's still easier to criticize it than to actually find a solution. So on the one hand, you have all these people that you want to have influence on them. You think it's a good thing. You think you're making them better.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's mostly true, And they are not your peers. They never will be. If you make a mistake of treating them as your peers, that's also a mistake. They're not. You have to. They're the children in your school. That's what they are. And why should they could come to the share, but they're not gonna. Yeah, they're gonna do exactly what you're describing. And then those people, actually, there's a formula of how to manage them. Like, people know how to do it. Like any Rebbe worth anything knows how to take care of that. I don't know how many Rebbes know how to take care of the other thing, right? Now, then there's like a totally different model, right? You see, like you could let's just have a group of people learning. Even that is very hard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to learn with the Chavris. I do now, but there's always ego problems. And especially if someone that's really on the level. So how do you even do that? That's one thing that's very hard to do. And then let's say we can do that. And there's like a model for doing that. Sort of, you can imagine like...
having good chavrus is like finding zivuk, because, it has to be your level. It has to be someone who's... you're not teaching them, you're learning with them. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Very difficult. And then could you let your... Third level is, could you let your Hasidim know that you have a chavrus? And how do you let them know? Right? It's a serious question. And maybe because of the model in which it works, there isn't a way to do it. I'm sure there is, but it would be something that isn't done. Again, maybe I just have very bad models in my head for this. Could there be like someone in the kind of position like who's sitting, sitting there on Shabbos afternoon or whenever and giving his long Pshat and Rashi, and then he has this friend sitting next to him who goes like, "Listen to me, you totally misread the whole thing. There's no such Rashi, you're totally messed up. Let me give you the true Pshat," and have everyone take the second guess Pshat as seriously as they took yours. Like, not the Pshat.
That's what I'm saying, the fear. Like, you must be terrified. If you are in that position, you must be terrified to open yourself up to that level of vulnerability. That's what I'm saying. It's like there's...
But because you're really gonna lose something.
Yeah, there's a lot to lose.
You have all these people that keep Shabbos because they think you're great. And turns out you're not. I mean, you're just as great as the next guy. Not, you're great.
Maybe a little bit more intelligent.
So what do you... I never believed in that kind of tzaddik that you're describing. I always...
I'm talking about what it says in the books.
I know it says in books. A lot of things say in books.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people. And this is the success of my education that it got me not to believe this. Whatever, from growing up in Lakewood or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I can't be about a Breslov or Lubavitch like in that way. Just like, okay, my guy might be great and everything, but he's not the...
The Square don't believe in tzaddikism?
They probably do.
Yeah.
I wasn't taught it.
The Hasidic farm, I'm all of a Gaddish with it.
Yeah, there's a difference. If you want to know like the sociology, there are different groups of Hasidim who take this more or less seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's not correct to say that all Hasidim believe in it the same way. At least not for their Rebbe that lives now. Some of them, there's always like maybe they once were and so on. But like if you go in to take like the big groups over here in the United States, Satmar doesn't believe in it. Vishnitz only halfway believes in it. Who else is there? Square they believe in it, yes. But like the non-square things like Rachmastrevk, which my father was Rachmastrevk Chassid, was whatever, don't really believe in it. In other words, it's not a thing. If you ask him, they say, yeah, but if you ask the Rebbe himself, like you say, yeah, tzaddikim, but not, he wouldn't tell. Doesn't even want you to think that he's the tzaddik.
Yeah.
Or he makes it. Again, I'm sure there's Chassidim that believe that, but
yeah,
it's not something that's central in the culture. It's not. In Bobiv, for example, take Bobiv again. I think that's the biggest Chassidim in the United States. They don't believe it. They will tell you that the yeshivish was the old whoever it was, but they don't think that their Rebbe is a tzaddik in that way. They think it's the Rebbe, and they respect him as the Rebbe, but they don't think it's a tzaddik in their kind of way. So practically, there's big differences. Like in Ger, they all believe that the Ger Rebbe is a tzaddik, but there's big differences, and people don't talk to each other because of this. Like they mean different things. That you could do give all the rituals that are done for a tzaddik, but it's not real.
Yeah.
So I belong to those people who never like. It's not the same. It doesn't have the same centrality. Like it's not like I am the truth, the light, and the way. You don't have.
Have the alpha of those.
Yeah, of course. Anyways, no, but we have to do Sinister Desert. It's very traditional for Jews to say this about other Jews that they think believe too much. Anyways, So, but if you talk about like the ideal, for being open. So, like you say, what do you even mean? What does it mean? I should connect with my friend Amir Freiman, who did a lot of study on this, not in the Jewish context specifically. What do you mean when you say a tzaddik? I think that like everything shouldn't be a dogma, but if you think of like I think there's a reality that these ideas are trying to describe, and there's also a correct hisnahagas, a correct way of acting relative to that, both on all sides of this story. That is another whole ethics, another whole way. I don't think it would be correct to think that all humans are the same. We're not. Besides we're being different in all kinds of ways. There are also people who just aren't here. I don't know if everyone that someone called a tzaddik is like that. And of course, it's very easily faked, this kind of thing. And charisma is definitely very easily faked. You talk whatever, I shouldn't, but like, whatever. It's so funny how Lubavitcher convinced that Lubavitcher had bad charisma when he had none. I've met people that are not. It was not impressive in person. He just wasn't. Dry and everything. He was just like. It's funny that they think that he was this warm, charismatic. My grandfather told me this. My grandfather learned in Lubavitch 50 years ago. I was in Chidus.
Yeah.
So this is funny. So a lot of it could be fake. But okay. But forget about that. And maybe it's just personality.
But I want to get away from the personality, because what you were talking about before, right,
so,
was that there's a system which doesn't allow for it. Right. And so while we're talking about the different the different elements of the system which doesn't allow for it, Tzaddikism to me is like,
the system?
Is one of the big elements.
Is that a system?
It's in all the Svarim. In other words, if you want to be with that program, you're going to look at who. Like the truth is that Tzaddik, you're right. That in the earlier Chabad, they tried to move away from that. That the Rebbe was just
the whole thing
right
of Chabad to move away from that.
That there wasn't a Tzaddikism, but that's true. And everyone else had Tzaddikim, etc. Right? Everyone else had that. Chabad was avoid mikoich atzmi, right? Which was avoid sabittel and all those types of things. And so it was moving away from that model where you could have the Rebbe as being a madrich derech or mashpia more, rather than the tzaddikism that exists. Anyway, but what I'm saying is all the other Chassidim had the tzaddik is very, very central.
Yes, but
so that's a system which you can't move away from if you're trying to live in that system.
You think?
I mean, I think they find it very difficult.
Look, I don't have this problem because I'm not a Hasidic Rebbe and I'm not planning to be ever. So it's not the system that I'm working within.
Right.
As far as I can see.
But like you mentioned, which I think is very perceptive, where you said that dynasties, right? Now, where does this come from, this idea? I mean, this is the way humans react. Humans are looking for a getchka. They're looking for another human who we can say is our conduit to God.
Yeah, but I don't. Maybe
people are always going to put you on a pedestal, which will end up being unrealistic. That's
true. I don't have a solution for that. Like the Chayza story. If you say that you're bad, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
There's no solution. There's no way to get out of that. The way to, but yeah, but that's not a tzaddik. There's still levels in this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should skip this, but I think that the tzaddik, again, it depends on how you read it. If I read Kedesh Levi or Ne'eman Lamelech and it says tzaddik, I sort of think it means a yid. And whenever it says yid, I think it means a person. So this is like my dictionary. When it says tzaddik, it means yid, and when it says yid, it means adam. So, or a good one, obviously.
Interesting. So,
a tzaddik is someone that has.
I have to reread this. Yeah, I have to reread this now.
Maybe. But why does tzaddik have to there's also a social position of a tzaddik, but that's something I don't know, if you daven for someone else, then you're the tzaddik in that situation. I don't know if you do that, but why does it have to be but and then also I don't have I have met such people, and you should be I shouldn't be suspicious of such people, but there are people that seem to have it. It's very hard to deny. In other words, deny it. And maybe there's it has to work with your personality and so on, but
have what?
I don't know what the what is. I can give you words, but I'm going to start thinking of specific people, and it's a problem. Yeah, let's drop some personalities. There is human life in the Olam Hazeh, in this Olam Asiyah, which is entirely different than the lives that most humans live. It might be untranslatable gap. Not clear that the way to solve it is to worship that guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've met such people, and of course those people also get mad, and that's not because they're tzaddikim, that's just because they're humans.
Yeah.
And so on. But I wouldn't want to I don't know if it helps that there's this Chiddush belief, but I wouldn't want to lose that in favor of some kind of there's a dogma of I don't know, modernity, which says there are no special people.
No. I wouldn't want to say that. What's really interesting is I think there are people like this without any shadow of a doubt. There are people who live a life of total ruchnis, and mostly people don't even know who those people are. But there are people, and sometimes they're just everyday people you meet, and then you talk to them and you recognize he's just living on a different plane. And unless you were able to kind of pick up on it, you wouldn't know. Most people just don't know. I meet people in business like this. I was at a conference the other day, and I met this guy, started talking to him in business, and all of a sudden I realized that this guy's like a gadol. Like, no one else would know. I mean, he all of a sudden, you turn it on, he's talking a completely different language. He's on a different plane. And so there are people walking around like this. But that but that doesn't mean they don't have taivas. That doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes. That doesn't mean and that doesn't mean they should be worshipped. Maybe they're inspiring to you. Maybe they have something to teach you. Mikom lamda iskalti. But I mean,
no, it doesn't mean that they don't have all the things that it means to be human, and also doesn't. I don't know, but there remains a question if you care for such a thing, but that's like a totally different discussion than what I was talking about before. But there remains a question if you care for such a thing, it remains a question of how to access them or how to access this thing that they have. In other words, you could be a tzaddik nister, said that's a tzaddik that how's it called?
Hidden tzaddik.
Yeah, but like there's a language of the Zohar for like, and I forgot. Toiv and Chesed, right? Something is Toiv for himself, but it doesn't mashpia. Cultivate legarmei. It's like it's still egoistic and something. And then there is a tzaddik not nister, and the point of that is not that everyone knows about him. That's not the point. The point is that he also has a way to teach this, right? Some weird way of teaching it. There's teaching, the kind of teaching that we know how to do. And then there's teaching, sometimes called spiritual transmission, or maybe just by now those ways of teaching or those ways of touching people get formalized into like all kind of silly things, like kissing his hand and taking his shirayim and whatever. But there are such things, and it's actually possible to do, I think, without it related. Most people are just not sophisticated enough for this, but like, if there's a role to be played, like being a tzaddik, and there's a role to be played in that of being a chassid, then those same people can do business tomorrow, whatever. Like, it doesn't mean the fact that I receive this, it's just another human capability, just another human kishran. Like, some people are good at teaching math, some people are good at making you have a leis neshama.
Yeah.
By the way, if the Rebbe does something less than that, it's worthless. Like, seriously, it makes you feel a little better. A lot of people can do that. He has to like literally take your soul out of your body.
I like this model that you're talking. So basically, on Shabbos in Shul, right, he's going to be Yomadrich Derech in some kind of way. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to business, you might be a better business person than him. In other words, like there's...
And he also might be, he might have other parts of his personality that are not influenced by that even, or maybe not even touched.
It's just one of his kishonos. He happens to have that kishon.
Yeah, it's probably a kishon itself to be learned and perfected and so on.
Yeah.
But people have a very difficult time in separating things like this. It's not even, in other words, it's not even the most important. I would even go further and say that's not even the most important talent, because, but this is the discussion that you really wanted to have, because acting wisely or goodly or in this life is a lot more than that. Includes a lot more than that.
It's probably even more difficult
like
to do correctly.
Is an easy thing. Not easy. Yeah, it's more difficult. And people go to a Rebbe, like, you could decide. If you go to the Rebbe because he has Dvaikas, then he could teach you, like I say, he could...
it's interesting, the Rebbe Rashab in Kunshas HaTfilah, he's got a whole chapter about this where he gets very upset. There's all these people who are basically they're doing hispannus and they're getting to Dvaikas, but they're still disgusting individuals. Like their midas are terrible, like leinoga v'lo paga. And so you can have this where someone could be a deeply spiritual person and just hasn't really become a better person necessarily, and he's frustrated by this phenomena. So I mean,
yeah, but then he goes. I don't remember. Then he wants to solve it by the Moravai Satfila.
Yeah, it's true. That's right. He's got his solution is modifying Avodah Satfila in order to kind of also deal with the person, because look, you can tell that he realizes his model is not working fully, so he has to tweak it, because he sees that for some people it's just not working, so he's tweaking the model a little bit, which makes it a little bit more challenging to do, because there's a big difference between thinking about your bad midas and thinking about the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah. Okay. I've watched Bechem Shalom Deutsch, and basically all his verbringen and all that became about Shalom Bayis. and I watched him arguing on a video with one of the other
I learned by him, by
Who?
the way, in the Tzemach Tzedek.
interesting. So I was arguing with someone, one of maskilim over there in Gupin or someone. He's like, tell us what Shlomo Chaim Kesselman taught you about tefillah. He said he taught me to be nice to your wife or something like that. No, that's not what it is. You're lying.
What was that?
He had this mechloikis with the other guy because he was just talking about midas. And then the guy said, no, that's not that way. This is tefillah. That's not what you should tell us something else. But anyways, maybe it does the next, but then that's still not talking about tzaddik. That's different. It's still different discussion.
This thing, Chivas HaTalmidim, and then there's a whole series of svarim which try and teach from the Piasetzna, Chivas HaTalmidim, and then there's Chivas HaAvrechim,
or something. Okay.
Which try and teach people how to go from being a Talmud to an Avrich to be, and in other words, give you the tools, and it's all about being in a chabura around this. So in other words, there are people who've tried to address how to be a group of people who are not just one person, but be a group.
I see. Yeah, I don't know that chabura worked out though.
No, never. No one actually did it in practice. There was a good theory about it. I'm not sure anyone has taken it seriously and actually implemented it.
No, I think people take this, but it's very hard. It's much harder than anything else.
But what you're trying to create here is not a community of people who are doing dveikus. Or the community you're trying to create here, you said you'd like to have chaverim. And some of the challenges, that's how we got off to this whole tangent.
Right. So that's right. I'm not that problem. I have a different problem. And at least I know the problem. I've noticed that all the people have not given me what I wanted. So I was dreaming of giving what I want to myself and to the next people. That's the story. And what it is mutually respected learning. In the sense of you have to respect me, otherwise it doesn't work. But I also try to respect you, and not only you, whoever it is, in the sense of discovering important things together. Yeah, and one of the big thing that I didn't ever manage to do, in other words, find any structure to really do it. I've working recently on some ideas. Is that it should not be the yeshiva of Yitzchok Lowy. It should be a yeshiva where I might be the best teacher. No? But still, there have to be more than one person. Has to be able to be, and they have to be able to really talk to each other in some sense. Not only each one has his class, but even that might be better than nothing. That part doesn't really exist yet. Aside from me doing podcasts and stuff.
But is it a possibility for it to become more of a chabura rather than a teacher talmid?
For it to become a chabura, we need more, a lot more. How do I say it nicely?
You can make this into a beis va'ad l'chachamim.
Yeah. For it to be a chabura, we need people that are at the same level of dedication and commitment and ability, at least within some range of being close to that. It turns out to be very hard, both because there's very few such people, which back to the real problems, and because it demands something different on my part. So what I actually do, and it's what am I doing? I know what I do. I wake up and I prepare a class, and I give the class. There's a lot of work to be done in making this class be less of a class and more of a conversation. That's one thing. But that's still not a chabur. Then there is work to be done in being able to cooperate really with people who are worthy of being cooperated with, or can be in some sense of a true chabura, for example, and that requires like I said, it's hard to find people that are on any level, and it's even harder. Or another issue is that, let's say I find such a person, I think there's such people. Can give you a list of people that I would dream of. Now, firstly, everyone has their life, there's work and so on.
You'd have to create a kollel, but you're paying them.
You have to pay kollel that paid a lot.
Yeah.
Like true money to be worth for those people to come.
That's what you have in universities.
Yeah, the universities do that by paying a lot, but whatever, I don't know. I wouldn't talk about things that I don't know about. The point that I was saying is that, first, if it would be such a kollel, it would have to be set up with a lot of geld, and that's not the biggest problem. Just to be clear, money is available. I don't like when people say there's not money. You raise the money. It's like, how did the university start? Maybe that's just, but even then, or before that, so the university also has students, and those students, so they have a system where they. Whatever, I don't know exactly why people go learn there, but
they go to learn to gain knowledge. I can fill in the gap there. Why people go?
Look, there are communities of learning happening.
Yeah,
I can't say I'm very impressed by most of what comes out of most universities in the areas that I am interested in, but there are.
And you have kollels as well, where people are sitting and learning, and people pay. In other words, if there's a derech halimud to be had here, right? Then, and there are people who are interested in that derech halimut. It's interesting, like you talk about Eitz Shammai, it was very interesting to me that I found out that he actually has people who sit and learn Chabad chassidus. They're not Lubavitchers, but they're learning Chabad chassidus all day. That's all they're doing. And this is he somehow convinced them that this is the thing to do. In other words, and these people probably know it as well as he does, if not better, at some point. Smart.
So what's my okay? I don't want to get into like specific people, but and it's always hard to say. I was in a like I was there, and maybe my problem with that was something else. Firstly, it's cheap to have a kollel in Israel because nobody has any money, and you don't really have to pay anyone anything. That's number one. So his whole kollel doesn't cost so much, even for serious level or whatever it is. That's number one. So if you go in Israel and you're talking with a bunch of people who have nothing to do with their life, you could pay them to do anything, and very cheap. Like you wouldn't believe how cheap. So that's one thing. And secondly, he also pays people with like the belief that he's the tzaddik or that he's the whatever, and they're bringing Mashiach by learning in the tzaddik's kollel or some nonsense like that.
People believe that about him?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's convinced them of that?
He also believes that, just to be clear.
So I was telling someone about him. I was telling them, I was saying the guy went from Hendon, where I was brought up in Edra, which is like 7 miles away, and now wears a Weisse Bekisha. I mean, that didn't happen by accident. I can guarantee you. So in other words, like everyone, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean everyone's trying to do something. Not everyone. A lot of people are trying to do something, and they've got something to sell. And it could be a positive thing. It doesn't mean it's being negative.
I don't think he does. In any case, the model that I've understood, that I've seen, the model of like leadership or teaching is not what I'm thinking about. You do get people around that are doing studies. It's very hard for me to say because maybe I'm just not smart enough, but I don't get the impression that there's true dialogue going on. Maybe in like small things, like in the sense of like in halacha or like in things that it's easy to do, right? Or like, in other words, how do you say this? Like, if someone believes that they're Mashiach, right? Now, I'm not against it. You want to be Mashiach, no problem. Let's see if you're Mashiach, right? Like, I don't know why would you be against. Like a priori, maybe the guy's Mashiach. Okay, like you have a vision of what Mashiach is. What's your plan for being Mashiach? How exactly is it gonna work? Maybe just a mystical Mashiach. Okay, let's talk about that. What exactly is it? Why do you think you're the Mashiach more than someone else? Maybe I'm the Mashiach. But could we have that dialogue? Or the moment someone says that just means just as how it is. You either accept me or don't.
I understand what you're saying here. I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying within the circles that you care about, it's difficult to find the people who are willing to go in this. Because what I'm thinking about is, I know people, but they're not in the circles that you care about.
Meaning?
in other words, what you're trying to do, it's really interesting. I think you've touched upon something which is, I find it really, really interesting, because my generation, I said, people who wanted to do that, they're doing it, but outside of the Miskeres. It's like a new thing. Like I go to the shul in New Haven, and it's, some people might call them Chabad light. And these guys are doing Judaism on their terms. 100%. Not in the way you're talking about, but it's, to me, it's a similar phenomenon. They're doing Judaism 100% of their terms. They're showing up to shul when they care to show up to shul. The whole thing is on their terms. Where in my generation, no one had the hustle to do that. People were just like, okay, I'm not doing it at all. These guys, they want to do it, they want to be part of it, they're doing it on their terms. So this is a new thing. But most of the people who are doing it on their terms, they're not doing it from an intellectual perspective. They're doing it because other things, probably on an emotional level, don't make sense to them. Even some of them might somewhat intellectual, but it's not deep. So they're doing it on their own terms. That's the Hamoinam's way of expression of what you're talking about. So communities of those, especially within like New Haven where I live, it's not that hard to find. I mean, they exist. But then to turn that into something which is a very serious limud, and to find people who are willing to do that, I think you're right. Probably very hard to find. Because most people, as you said, they're not there. So I think that's what you're...
That's part of it, yeah. That's another, like, that also. I will, yeah.
Most people, they're just not thinking about those things. They're just not...
Yes, and some are, but they're stuck. Like, I didn't talk to you like about this, like the question of like doing things within a misgeres, like you call it, or not, or what that even means. We didn't like talk about this yet.
You know, it blew my mind. Do you know Yisachar Katz? So many years ago, he and I started up this. It was a web page we put up called FromandStuck.com. And it was for people who were in the From community and felt stuck. And we were inundated with phone calls. I eventually had to say, I can't do this anymore. We inundated with people from within every part of the ultra-Orthodox world. There was one guy who was a Rosh Kollel. Didn't know what to do with himself. And I didn't know the actual names of one person. Maybe one. There was actually one person I knew that his real name, and he had already kind of left the community. But all these people, they were all calling me anonymous. Some of the most heartbreaking stories of people who were like truly, truly stuck within these communities. And so that's the other thing. They probably exist. They're not showing up.
I think that's like a very limited way of thinking, though. Like it's not just like, okay, how do you be comfortable and people that wear white shirts or whatever. Sounds like I want to really do something, and I don't think, in other words, what I need, I don't think is being done anywhere. And if it is, then good for them. Doesn't bother me. Not relevant to me either. So, and I don't have a very easy way of saying it, but like this question of also, do you drop out of something or not? Maybe I have a pre-modern understanding of this, in the sense of, like, people say this story, like, until Spinoza came, you had to either be a Jew or a Christian, and there wasn't a third option. Guess what? There still isn't. Not for me. And I know the people that think there are. I haven't noticed them doing anything in their life. So it's not like I didn't choose any of the circumstances of my family. Nobody chooses where to be born unless you believe in some, maybe in the previous Gilgal, but not in this one. I didn't choose my community. My community didn't choose me. I'm not asking them if I should belong to them, and they don't ask me. It's not a relationship based on choice. I know that some of them try to pretend that it is, but it isn't.
Interesting.
It's based on, you sometimes called accident of birth or hashkafa, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And these are relations that exist by necessity. This is not by choice and not by reason. And that means that being in a fight with it is kind of dumb. It's like arguing with the fact that gravity exists. And also means that you work with what you have, not in a defeated way. And it also means that it's chatchila. In other words, what's called philosophy or what's called quest, anything like that, always had this as its starting point. And there isn't another option. There isn't like, should have been born free in a hippie commune in Colorado, and then they would have been free. Turns out I also met the people that were born there and they weren't born free. So you have your conditions, and then the promise of spirituality or philosophy or anything is that it's possible for a human being in some way to transcend those conditions, at least in your mind, maybe in some feelings and so on. That's what Chassidus is about also. And I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
And I find the framing, both sides are responsible for this messed up framing, but the framing were like, no, you were brought up in a community that believes on, so there's no such a thing as a community that believes something. If it's a real community, if it's a fake, imaginary community, then it could be. But a community that actually exists in this world is always a community, one of necessity. I wasn't decided to be a Jew, and therefore I don't have to choose. I don't have to believe that Jews are right. They're still the Jews and me. And the same thing for a lot more high resolution, like little things that I somewhat am. Not that I don't have to lie to myself and say, well, this is the best system ever, or the best. It's just the one that's my body, right? Just like I have a body and can't really change it. It's controversial now, I know, but mostly it can't be changed. You can change your family, and you can change your nationality, and you can change your community. And I don't even know if the concept of like social activism, where like, okay, but I want to make a shul, like a shul in our community. Well, yeah, that's what everyone does. Everyone just makes a shul where they feel comfortable. No, not the first one. That's not special. It's not revolutionary. It's normal. It's very normal. I think that there was like what you're talking about. Like, I know like people a generation above me, like some of them had this like fantasy. There's a fantasy called going OTD. No, that's as far as I can tell, there's not really such a thing. In other words, there isn't a thing called being OTD. There are people that grew up this way and then are that way. Yeah, you could always do that.
No, I just like that. Because it assumes that there is a D.
Also.
Right.
But the not knowing that there's a D, that's what all the religious, like, what did the Rabbi Moshe Leon realize when he was in 7 and whatever? Like, yeah, there's some things that we received and we're working with them because that's the material that we have.
Yeah.
And it's not like, there's also not like a weight. There isn't a not like, again, you could immigrate to some other community and then whatever. Some people it's good for it to do that, but it's not like a better way. It's not necessarily like a more correct way, and there's not really such a way. That's the truth. That concept is sort of failed, as far as I can tell. And what there is like I said, like the pre-modern kind of way of thinking. There are people that are born in certain things that brings along certain commitments. If you tell me, like as someone that like this you can't, how do you call it? You can't betray your people or something. Okay, get that. But also would like to like make that limit, like that would be a minimal thing, right? There's some very, very, meaning to say, because I see it as a balance of necessity, what it requires has to be only what is necessary. It's not necessary in order for me to claim to be, not claim, it's not a claim that I make, it's a fact. Even if I would claim otherwise, it would still be true. But in order for me to like not betray that, all I have to do is not like, I don't know, find some, whatever the equivalent of like Mechal Shabbos Fares, which the actual act of that today is not what it is, but whatever the equivalent of that would be. And when the Chacham said that only if you do that, that's very extreme, because they said you could eat chazer befares, it doesn't do anything. Yeah. You could do all kinds of things. Just please don't do this. That's like a way of declaring en lenechelek. Okay, I don't declare en lenechelek, but nothing. But then doesn't require me to not speak openly, or doesn't require me to not ask whatever question I want, or read any book I want, or and I don't see that it's a conflict at all. Like, anyways, so what am I saying? So but that has to be done seriously, and we're trying to do that seriously. And I think there's progress to be made also.
Shleima.
And there's good things.
That 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That 20 years ago, people wouldn't have described the way you just described it.
Yeah, I guess not.
In other words, people would have seen it as much more, because what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, you're not saying that it's not really a pre-modern thing. It's really what you're saying is a postmodern thing, right?
You could say that if you want.
In other words, what you're saying is that these definitions of what I'm born into, the way that's defined is not so clearly defined, and I can actually define it differently the way I want to define it. In other words, there is a very long history which fits in the Haredi community today about not learning philosophy, for example. And there's very sharp werte about studying philosophy. But my mashpia in yeshiva told me that if I learned Sifrei Hakira, even Sifrei Hakira from like the Moreh Nevuchim and others, he'll never talk to me again. And so that was how many years ago now? I'm talking about 27 years, nearly 30 years ago, right? More, about 30 years ago. I thought that therefore I must read it. Because if this was the Yarek Val Yavid, then I better read these books. And they weren't as exciting as I thought they were. It's like the first time I went to the movies, they told me you can't go to the movie theater because what goes on there. So I was a kid. I was not 13 or 14 years old. The middle of the day, I go to watch a movie. I'm so excited what I'm going to see, and I'm the only one in the theater, and nothing's going on. And the movie was boring to boot. I'm making a joke, but the point is that you're making it's an interesting argument, but it's a postmodern argument, I think, rather than a pre-modern argument, because you're saying that those very clear definitions, which perhaps may have been pre-modern clear definitions, which Spinoza wasn't able to fit into, these definitions are malleable enough to be able to also subsume this.
So why do I say pre-modern instead of postmodern? Because, look, so Spinoza, forget about Spinoza. Let's talk about the last 50 years, okay? I have a theory that so I have this argument, like, just an argument. I don't know. It doesn't do anything. Arguments don't do things. They're just ways of winning debate. They're not. Doesn't help much. But I have this argument that goes like this, right? And it's like a version of a classic argument in the like modern discourse. Like, if I would have been, and this is sort of generationally true. Like, if I would have been in my father's generation, okay, and I chose to go to yeshiva, okay, not necessarily literally chose, but sort of chose, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
because back then people chose.
Yeah, again, some more.
It was more of a
choice. Is complicated, but
yeah,
he chose to be this kind of person.
Yeah,
okay, he sort of did. His cousin isn't, and his brother. Yeah. My father happens not to have brothers, but so on. They didn't have to, right? Mm-hmm. And then the yeshiva could come 2 weeks later. You decide to go to the movie. The yeshiva could come. Look, you're the one to be a yeshiva bach. You don't want to be a movie goer. So please find yourself a place where you can go to the movies. And there's actually such a place. Go hang out with your brother. No problem. Yeah. But if you didn't choose that, right? Yeah. Nobody told. I didn't choose to go to yeshiva, or any of this. So with what right are you throwing me out for going to the movies, right? This is not a choice thing. Okay, now you might not be happy. You want to punish me. That's fine. Maybe there's like a law. You have to punish me. No problem. But you can't say that I don't belong. I don't belong. This is not a voluntary choice to begin with. It's a condition of my life, and there's no way to take me out of it. You don't have the right to take me out of it. No, that's a silly argument because the yeshiva doesn't buy it, so that's useless. But as an argument for myself, I think that it's true argument.
I think Rosh Yeshivas are starting to buy this.
Yeah, in some sense. Not the yeshivas, but like more like
the communities.
Yeah, communities are starting to buy it, and I think they're right. And I also think there might be in other words, it might be true if some generation that was mostly
because they realized what you said. It didn't work the other way.
Right, and it's true. And I think it's also true that at this point, people of my generation haven't chosen any of it. Like, to the extent of, like, you didn't, I don't know if you chose, but you didn't choose to be a such and such chassid. And each one of our parents chose that. Yeah. Even if you didn't choose to be from, you chose 100%. To be such a chassid or a litvak or whatever it is. And once that's not a choice, then you go back to whatever logic of non-chosen identities work with. Yeah. Now, that's why...
That's very interesting. Very insightful, yeah.
I actually think this is a good thing. Yeah. Good in the sense of...
By the way, I think this is the way it's always been.
Right, very good. So that's not postmodern. That's how it's always been.
No, I understand.
There was one weird generation in which there was a choice. It's not normal to have a choice.
I agree with you. I actually completely agree with you. Someone made this comment to me and said, I wouldn't think that you would like in this shul because it's too, And I said, no, this is the way it's always been. Like, this is authentic Judaism. This is the people... Yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's why I think it's pre-matter in the sense, I think this is good for Judaism and for the Jews. In other words, it's good for Judaism. Like, I'll give you a different example from a different area. Like, I have a friend, more than one person actually.
By the way, I just thought, because I'm reading the book from Chaim Grade right now, where he describes a lot of this. I don't know if you've read Chaim Grade. I've never read him until now. Someone's told me I need to start reading him.
I was also told, but I don't listen to everything.
It depends who makes the recommendation.
It's said to be a good book, yeah.
It depends who makes the recommendation, right? Not every book that I'm recommended to read either. But the point is that obviously he's talking about an era where this happened also, and there was also in and out. So it's not just as new as...
I guess, yeah. It's okay, well, let's not get the history, but I think this is a good thing for the Judaism because... So I have some, like, for example, a friend that I have in Israel, very liberal kind of person, and he's like, told me, look, I don't understand the arguments that they were colonialist. You know why? I was born here. My father wasn't. Mm-hmm. I understand the argument on him, but the guy's 90. What do you want from him? He might have fought with in 48 or whatever. Yeah. But I was just born here. This is my country, just like it's anyone else's.
Yeah.
And this is not an argument. Like, it's not an intellectual argument. It's an emotional argument. It's like a state of being. It's like, I am indigenous to this place, and I acknowledge that it might have not. Maybe my grandfather wasn't, but I am. And like the way place, it's natural to him. And now, the other thing, he might be very critical. He might say the government should do this to do that. I don't agree with anything that the actual state does. That's not a problem. But he doesn't question his belonging there in the sense of that he has the right to be there. Or that's not like a right. It's like something before a right, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to justify it. I'm like a Golik son. He said if someone asks, he can't really answer the question just because. And this is like an accomplishment of Zionism, like that it got the Jews to actually be indigenous to a place. Now, it's a similar thing for this. Like, and that's there's a professor Podoxic who argues that this is the great success of people don't realize. People talk about like post-Zionism, but post-Zionism, all the post-Zionists take it for granted that they belong there.
Yeah.
And then, since you take it for granted, so now you can say, well, but we should do everything differently. Okay.
Yeah.
And in a very similar way, like, this is how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a choice which religion you belong to. That's a weird state that happens like once in a millennium in the world. So the most of the time, it's Minig of a Bedani. It's fine. I know Chassidus, it sounds very bad, like it's just folklore. That's
it's very
that's
interesting.
The condition of humans.
I was brought up in England. And orthodoxy is, like in Australia, like in South Africa, orthodoxy, and in Israel, by the way, orthodoxy is, you're going to do your Judaism, you're going to do Orthodox. You're Jewish. When you go to shul, you go to an Orthodox shul, and you go to if you're a woman, you go to Ezras Nashim. This isn't like a choice. This is the way you're practicing the Judaism that exists, because that's what you're doing. And you don't think, back in the Shai, you didn't think I'm a Frum Yid, not a Frum Yid. You may have not done all the mitzvahs, but it's really interesting that you say this isn't a faith community, because that's like a new... I've not really thought about it that way before, because I've always thought of these communities as being faith communities. What binds people together to be one Chassidus rather than another Chassidus, etc., is
they used
fundamentally.
To be, but they stopped being.
It's interesting. Yeah, I didn't notice this change.
It's very interesting because, like, even Chabad, like, there's differences. Like, some communities are more explicit, like just like an ethnicity.
Yeah.
but like
which one? Like maybe Satmar.
Yeah, for example, like more what they call Polish Chassidus. Like, actually, many of the people are there because their great grandfathers were there. Not all of them, but even the ones that like, okay, so you can be mitzvah to my ethnicity. There's Geras, like, okay, but Chabad, like, for example, is an extremely ideologically conscious community, and they pretend very strongly to all be there because they believe in it. It might be somewhat true, but definitely not true once you have grandchildren. They can't be true. There was never a grandchild. Like,
it's less and less the case.
There was, there's no religion that remains a faith community when they have grandchildren. The ones that are really pure actually never have grandchildren. That's this trick. But if you have grandchildren, then your grandchildren is going to be the ones that, this is our life. We on Shabbos we eat cholent, and Sunday we do this, and so on. No. Is there a truth? Is there, that's a different discussion. But it's also, I'm like comfortable thinking that this limits you in some ways, and that's fine. Like I said, you can't betray, but then the question of who defines what betrayal is, but like, you can't have a maximalist interpretation of that, because that just turns it back into the other thing. Like,
there was a tkufa when there was that. I think that's changed. Like in the last 10 years, right? Probably.
Yeah, but right. And there's like an entirely other side, like where maybe you don't want to say something like total Zionism, like what defines a Jew is just an ethnicity. It becomes very empty also. So like you want to say something like, without being like a Neturei, you say something like, we're the ethnicity that holds that you should put on tefillin and keep Shabbos. Doesn't mean that we do. That's a different thing. Like sometimes we do that, or like the community does, not every individual. But that's just like the people that we are, and it's not. Someone has big kavanas and he wants to have meaning, and he has a kavana, and that okay, that's one person. Another person just does it. That's the best. That's the best. It's part of it.
People just do it as part of their culture. This is what we do. On a Saturday, we wake up on Shabbos. We wake up and.
I think trying to defend myself against a bunch of different like arguments against it. But in any case, that's why I feel like very comfortable in this. I don't think that. Do you belong? What kind of a question is this? This is the question from my great grandfather. You could ask him if you want, but he's dead. Like.
Yeah, but although you say this is pre-modern, and maybe let's not say it's post-modern, because giving it...
What I mean to say is that I'm not defining Judaism for myself. Yeah. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that whatever it is I am was defined for me, or was given to me.
Yeah.
By something else, by my birth, or by culture. And now I'm learning things for myself. I want to discover the truth for myself. I want to have the correct actions for myself. Yeah. But there are limits to that, and those limits not in what I believe, because that's silly. Like, why would you have to believe something because you're born in something? You might have to say things in a certain way. I'm not sure, but you can't have to believe something. Like, really, if you ask me and you, do you believe? I don't know. I could like. Then this whole discussion of, like I said, like betrayal becomes faith becomes a question of ne'emanut, allegiance or whatever. Like, and then the correct context becomes very important. Like. What's his name? Meir Buzaglo has a story. No, Meir Buzaglo has a book, Safal Ne'emanim. It's about tradition, Mesorat Yut. He has a story where there's like some Sephardi guy going to a grave somewhere, and his family goes on, like, they believe that this is where some miracle or whatever. And there's like a guy from the outside, like some Frenchie or something, comes and says, and ask the guy, so you really believe that that's the holy water? And he says, like, I'm translating this in my head. You mean to say, are you part of those dumb, archaic people? Yeah, the answer is yes. Did you ask me a factual question? Of course, that's a different question.
Right.
But you mean to say, are you betraying your people or not? No, I'm not. That's a very different, but that's like a theory. I don't know.
But there's a very famous professor, I forget the guy's name, but there was a big article about it recently in one of the publications in Israel. And he basically makes this argument that he's got payers, and he...
Shalom Tzaddik.
Yeah. He makes a similar type of... I think, maybe you can show me where there's the differences between what you're saying and what he says.
I've read his book, and I wrote a long critique of it. You can read it. I didn't find him saying this point. Like, he talks about Mesorat Yut, but I don't think... Maybe, I don't know if he would disagree, but I don't...
Because I'll tell you where it falls down for me, is that Orthodox Judaism in general, it's not like I believe in the American dream. I'm American, we believe in the American dream, and what does that mean? It means on a Sunday is game day, and if you support the Broncos, you wear orange, and you watch the fight on Saturday night, and you do Thanksgiving, and you believe in the house in the suburbs with the 2 cars, annual fancy vacation. And it's not that hard to do, as long as you get a good job in corporate America or whatever. You're talking about system which regulates every aspect of your life. It's different. And it seems to me that if you don't have the faith, that's why you say it's a faith community, because the faith is what gives the neshama to it. It gives the motivation to it, the desire to do all these things. Or else, in other words, if you don't have the faith, it ends up being, all the people who came to the shul I went to, Dayan Fisher was the Rabbi Emeritus, I mentioned before, a lot of people drove there. They drove the car around the corner and then they walked the rest. But the point is that that's the way Judaism was for many, many years in lots and lots of places. But a lot of those people aren't in their day-to-day life living the frum life. They're just, when they come to shul, they are. Right?
I think that's a self-presentation that's a little bit wrong. In other words, again, depends on... I don't disagree that there are people that live like that. And there's, again, a generational difference in that. And also depends a lot on circumstances. So let's say it like this. There's this thought that in order for Judaism or Orthodoxy or whatever to be justified, to be strong enough, you have to have the kind of belief that will give you Mesiras Nefesh for it. So and they say, what do you mean? It's just the culture. It's just I don't say it's just the culture, it's just the given of my life. What do you mean? So is that enough so that if you're in some Hotzenplatz somewhere and you're stuck and you're not going to drive on Shabbos and you're going to be stuck in your hotel room all day without food because who knows if the food is kosher?
Right? There's lots of different examples like that. Tons of examples like that.
Yeah, that's what people imagine.
Yeah.
And that's a small Mesiras Nefesh, right? There's bigger ones. And I think the answer is no. And what I mean to say the answer is no is that it's very weird to have a criteria for something where the criteria is some extreme out of the ordinary case. Yiddishkeit is not meant to be kept in a hotel by yourself where you're stuck for Shabbos. Yiddishkeit is meant to be lived in a community where it's actually, you would be weird if you drive on Shabbos. Like your neighbor would look at you and like, what's going on with you? Is your wife having a baby or something? Mm-hmm. That's where it's meant to be kept. It's not meant to be kept with a Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is an extreme. Sometimes you need it for radical cases, extreme cases. That's the only way. Okay, but it's meant to be kept where it's easy. It's supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be hard. And the ideal situation where you are is where it's easy. Like I think about Oven. Like okay, most of my life I've lived in like from neighborhoods. It's not hard to keep kosher. It would be hard to not keep kosher because I go to a store. I could I've thought of it. Like you do mussar b'chalav. That would be an easy way to do it. In Lakewood, like you just put the thing together. Yeah, mussar b'chalav geshmak. Okay, but besides for that, it's very hard because like you could get the shvacha hechsher, but it's still kosher. It's real, right?
Yeah.
So if you live in somewhere where like you have to call New York to send you kosher meat once in a half a year so you can eat meat.
Yeah.
But Yiddishkeit wasn't meant to be lived that way.
Yeah.
Why would we make that the criteria? Now, what happens in the edge case where I am? Okay, those are questions. Some people are more Rakshan and some people are less. That's fine. But I don't think that I don't think we have to justify the whole system by having this edge case. This is like a very big failure mode of Lamdish thinking. Like we don't have to make it work for that case. It's not supposed to work in that case. In that case, just because it's supposed to be hard, it's supposed to be weird, and Chachamim said you shouldn't. If there's a guy, a tzaddik, I forgot, the tzaddik living in your shut, you can't make a erev. There's a whole problem. Why? Mm. And there's a solution also, but the answer is you shouldn't live in it. There's a gzeira, I forgot the erev now, but there's a gzeira that it can't be masayich from some misha and imam merv, and the reason is because the Chacham said you should not. Of course you want to carry on Shabbos. It's not like you should be stuck in your house. That's the goal. The end goal of this takut is not you should be stuck. You should be like, okay, look, the Torah says Chacham say you shouldn't carry, so now I'm going to be stuck. And you can't even carry into the chutzah. It's not like you basically can't live. The answer is move.
Right.
The answer isn't have Mesiras Nefesh. The answer is move to somewhere where you don't have to have Mesiras Nefesh. And I think that's l'chatchila like that. Like Yiddishkeit was never, just to be clear, there was always like one Jew living in whatever. Yeah. But generally, Judaism is practiced in a community where it's more or less. That's what's socially accepted. That's easy. It's even like taken to be an obligation because that's just a way of saying that's what everyone does. There isn't. If you don't do it, you're a weirdo. You're not gonna have a school for your kids. That just means making it easy for you. It's not making it hard for you. And yeah, if I don't claim that if I would have been living in some random place in Chleisensvi, that I would be doing everything I do now. I don't claim that there's a need for that. Maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't. That would be a different question. Because I still want to be connected to tradition, so I'm going to do weird things. You're not supposed to be weird. You're supposed to be normal. Just
this is how your community does it. And you're good with that because you're used to it and you like it.
I always grew up like this. I don't have
No, absolutely. What you're saying is true. My default is to be, for me, it's very hard for me to be totally irreligious. It's something I would have to work really, really hard to become.
I used to have a friend, one of the first people that I was talked at length about all these things. He told me, look, I think the only nafkamina of all these fakis is that you don't have to fast on Shavuos B'Tammuz. Like, Kippur, of course, this whatever you'd fast. But Shavuos B'Tammuz is okay, isn't it? That's what you gain out of the whole thing. It seems correct to me. And then you think about it and you realize, my grandmother also doesn't fast on Shavuos B'Tammuz. Why not? She never, not because she's, whatever.
Because it's hard for her to.
Obviously, because it's hard, and it's hard for everyone. But whatever.
So, you got
there's not like an ideology. Yeah, it's whatever. Certain things that are hard.
Anyway, this has been
that's all.
It's been an amazing conversation.
It is.
It's not too much. Still, we could go on for much longer, but I know that I'm very, very appreciative of your time. And
I appreciate that you came all the way here.
Yeah.
Just to hear my shtisim.
First of all, not shtusim, number one. Number two, I don't usually travel a lot. I usually do it over Zoom. But based on listening to your shurim, etc., I felt that it was the right thing, and it made sense for me to schlep all the way here. So,
was it better?
And my wife said, "Wow, you're really investing in this, and you haven't disappointed."
Thank you.
So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to be continued, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay.